Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We've got Nick Farabaugh on today. We're going to recap day one of Steelers OTAs. Broderick Jones at left tackle, Troy Fautanu at right. We finally see the future of the offensive line. What were our readouts on that? Also, Roman Wilson talk, and could the secondary roles be a little flexible this year? We'll talk about that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And as I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Nick Farabaugh. He's back on this show. You know his work at PennLive.com, Steelers writer there. Nick, day one of OTAs is in the books, and you and I think, had our eyes locked on the same thing as soon as we walked through. We didn't care that DK Metcalf or TJ Watt weren't there. It's OTAs. We wanted to see where the heck the Steelers offensive linemen were lining up, and we got it confirmed. Broderick Jones, at least for day one of OTAs, is at left tackle. Troy Fautanu is at right tackle. Something that you and I have talked about was going to be the plan since they drafted Troy Fautanu last year, despite Troy Fautanu playing left predominantly in college for a left-handed quarterback and the roles there. It's just OTAs. We can't say, oh, how do you think they did? They're doing this. I will say this. I did think Broderick Jones looked leaner. I do think that he looked a little bit more, compact in his like you could tell he's been working out. But I do think it's a sign that the Steelers are finally going to actually see the offensive line we've been talking about, or at least hearing about, that they've envisioned for some time now.
Yeah, and he shed all the bulky equipment on his arms that were there because of the injuries he suffered before even taking a snap of the regular season last year. That's nice to have off too. There was noticeable power, I think, back in his punch that we didn't see a lot of last year, which I thought was good to see. Troy Fautanu, too, coming back from the injury, looked pretty good to me. Really looked good. So I think that all lines up really well. But this has been what should have happened a long time ago. We had talked about Broderick Jones. He was way more comfortable on the left side than the right side. And even if you don't subscribe to the natural sides thing, you should play both sides, all of that. Like, this was a guy that clearly was not comfortable on the right side compared to the left side. And he was raw coming into this career, right? Like, you drafted him in the first round and you knew he was going to need work. Like, this was a guy that was more of a project. He wasn't a polished player. Like, Fautanu's pretty polished. Like, that's a little different. Broderick wasn't going to need technique-based, footwork, hand usage. All of it's going to need rework. And then they flipped him to right, and so he had another wrinkle. And so this getting him back to the left side now, it's going to make him comfortable. I also think Troy, from when I've been talking with Troy over the past year, has told me that he's more comfortable on the right side, which is interesting because he's actually played more left tackle than right tackle. He said it's easier to play on the right side. He doesn't look like he loses anything going right. He doesn't have a hitch in his drops. He doesn't have a hitch in his pass sets. He looks really fluid. Some guys can do it. Some guys can't. I think Troy is one of those guys that can flip and do it fine. I think Broderick might be one of those guys that has a tougher time, just like Dan Moore did. So you just kind of got to figure out where you are. But I think this is the right move for the Steelers. We'll see how both these guys kind of take the steps, and that's going to be the big thing to watch in training camp and the preseason and the regular season. But I think this is the correct move. That's what I think.
I feel you too. This is the correct move. This is the move that's been coming. And you know what? If Troy Fautanu doesn't get hurt at the start of that last season, maybe it happens last year because Dan Moore started off red hot, but once he started to fail, like this, I think the Steelers might have said, you know what? Let's get to the future sooner rather than later, as things started to break down on the Steelers there. But let's talk about what it would look like if this move is successful. And I don't mean these guys become the best tackle pair in the NFL, but I'm saying if they both became good offensive tackles for the Steelers, the amount of protection that they'd be able to offer to the Steelers at the most important position to limit edge rushers. That's where I look at there. Now, if you're looking at the rates as far as how often a tackle gives up pressure that impacts a quarterback play, just basing off of PFF's pressure numbers. And we know that there's a lot of stuff behind PFF pressure numbers, but basing it off of that, Broderick Jones, since he's been in the NFL, has given up a pressure every 12.8 snaps that he's been in pass protection. Not good. That is a terrible rate to have. In college, granted, different level of competition, it was every 37.3 snaps. That's a lot closer to what you want. Troy Fautanu in college, every 29.1 snaps. If you were to compare it to the guy that was the best pass protector in the NFL by most metrics, it'd be Tristan Wirfs. He gave up a pressure every 48.2 snaps. So in between there, 12.8 where Broderick was last year and 48.2 where the guy that had the best pressure allowed numbers of guys that started the whole season and were primary pass protectors like Tristan Wirfs. I think it'd be reasonable to expect him to put that to get that number up into the high 20s this year, where, and again, it's not like there's a scoreboard that keeps track of that stuff. This will be us, the nerds, that are putting together the numbers and keeping our studies, because that's what we do as journalists. But if Broderick Jones gets to the point where he is allowing a pressure every 27, 28, 29 snaps instead of every 12, that does so much for the Steelers in pass protection. If Troy Fautanu is in a similar range, if he's in the mid to high 20s, as far as how often he's giving up a pressure at the tackle position, those type of things do a lot for an offense, not let alone the run game impact that they could bring. But if they can bring that element to what the Steelers did, that does so much for what you can do on offense.
It does. I mean, creating that pocket for a quarterback, especially if you're going to have a quarterback that is not going to be exactly, Lamar Jackson out there, which is what they're going to have this year. That helps. When you have pocket passers, like whether it's Rodgers, whether that is Rudolph, that's going to help a lot. And so that's really what you want. I think the other thing with Broderick is, and we talked about this last week, is I just want to see the mental lapses gone, right? Like we just want to don't know what you're going to do each play. Because when he was on in 2023, when he was a puller and when he was a bulldozer in the run game, he's a big time boost to their run game. So I thought that was really big too. Fautanu, I mean, in the one game he started against the Broncos, turned out to be against Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper, who were two really good edge rushers last year. He did pretty good. I think he only allowed 2 or 3 pressures in that game, didn't allow a sack. That's really good. Broderick also just allows a few too many sacks. I think he allowed 11 last year, second to only Dan Moore. So you just like that, right? The Steelers just need baseline level pass pro from these two tackles. And it's a marketed improvement from last year, because last year it was a pretty hard kind of stretch there for these quarterbacks. And so, you just need league average play. For Broderick, that means locking in, having the mental lapses gone, and then taking a leap, in my opinion, with his footwork. More importantly, even his hands. His hands do kind of need some work at times. He's a little bit off with the timing at times, and the placement can get a little wide. But I think his footwork is where you can kind of fall everything, right? When he struggles, his footwork is either maybe it's off a little bit. He's too wide. He's too narrow. He can bend over. He's a waist bender and can lunge instead of kind of letting you go in using his length. So I think that's another big thing to look at. So there's technical things there. But if Broderick could take a leap, I mean, dude, with Zach Frazier already there, with Mason McCormick on the interior, and if Fautanu can be solid on the right side, you have 4 of your 5 really starting offensive linemen of the future. That'd be huge for them.
It'd be huge for them. They need that group, because that's supposed to be the core of what builds the path for the new offense to rise back to being one of the better offenses in the NFL when they eventually get their quarterback next year and the years to come. And again, it starts with those guys. And again, it's different this time around, because in most of the Steelers' history, they have built the line from the inside out. They've prioritized getting the center, Pouncey, first-round pick, Dermontti Dawson, legendary center, Mike Webster, legendary center, and they built from the inside out. They've gotten legendary guards like Alan Faneca or David DeCastro. Not in Alan Faneca's ilk, but very close to that. He was all pro several years. Now this time around, they've invested the high picks in the tackle positions, and they're kind of letting the guard position be the position that's not the one that they haven't invested highly in just yet. With a 4th rounder in Mason McCormick, a free agent in Isaac Seumalo, and they do value center, of course, still. Zach Frazier being a 2nd-round pick. But those tackles, if they can do the things that we're talking about, it could go a long way to, 1, establishing the run, but 2, like we're talking about here, being that those primary pass protectors that keep the quarterback's pocket clean and can be an ultimate boost, not just to presumably Aaron Rodgers in this year. But when you get that rookie quarterback, making so they don't have to be as skittish in the pocket as we saw guys like Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph have to be when they were getting the ball and having to make quick decisions because pressure was coming from all sides.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, if you can get these guys kind of part of the locomotive, having a more efficient run game for this offense means the world. Like it does. It opens up play action. When they get in front of the sticks, it just opens up so many things. Like you'd be shocked how much it would open up for Pat Fryer, how much it will open up for DK Metcalf to make explosive plays. Arthur Smith's offense, when it is rolling at its best, has efficient running offenses. They need explosive plays too. And I think that's going to be a big part of that. Obviously, Fautanu and Broderick are just really athletic, and they're able to get out in space. And so hopefully you can hit a few of those with Caleb Johnson and Jaylen Warren. But they need an efficient running offense. And so not only in the pass pro side of things, but the run game, if they can become an efficient first down rushing offense and stay ahead of the sticks, that's where maybe you can find a hidden leap here in this offense compared to last year. So I think that's really important. These tackles mean, I cannot even stress enough, these tackles mean everything in this offense.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about another player that could take a big leap for the Steelers because he didn't play last year. That's Roman Wilson. We got to talk to him. We'll have a clip of him on the show in the next segment here. Stick with us. Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's game-winning shots or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live throughout games. With player prop bets, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. The Knicks and Pacers face off in the East, while the Timberwolves and Thunder throw down in the West. Stars like Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson, SGA, and Tyrese Halliburton are sure to light up box scores and win people plenty of money on prop bets. And if you're new to FanDuel, you can win $200 in bonus bets if you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. It's a great deal to take advantage of the NBA playoffs. Again, go to FanDuel.com, place your first bet of $5 or more, and if you win, you get $200 back in bonus bets on FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh, continuing our discussions here. Now, we have gotten a chance to see Broderick Jones. We got a brief chance to see Troy Fautanu last year. We never got a chance to see Roman Wilson last year due to injuries, whatever it was. And he was finally back at Steelers OTAs, looking healthy, looking fine, running routes and doing things there. Nick, what's a realistic expectation for what Roman Wilson could be for the Steelers offense this season, considering we never got to see anything last year?
Yeah, really didn't even get to see much of training camp. He got hurt on like the 5th practice on the first play. So yeah, it was really unfortunate. I mean, here's what I would want him to be. I'd want him to be a horizontal field stretcher out of the slot that could be a chain mover. And I mean, that doesn't have to be something huge. That can be a wide receiver 3-4 kind of player, but I want to see him win on over routes. I want to see him win on drag routes. I want to see him win on those because that's where his skill is. He is a very explosive player that can run away from slot corners, even at the NFL level. He's that fast. His instant explosiveness is his unique trait, Chris. Watch him at practice. You and I have watched him at practice enough at least to get this. You see him in 2 steps reach top speed. Like it's pretty freaky. That's what gets him there. That's why putting him in motion and all of that really works well. He's also physical enough to kind of separate at the top of routes on those kind of horizontal ones, which is why it works for him. He's got great hands. So all these work for Roman Wilson. And so that's what you want to see. I want to see the niche. I want to see the role he had at Michigan carved out at the NFL level. He's coachable. He works hard. He's willing to compete down in and down out. One of the 5 snaps we actually got to see him play last year was him from the slot, insert blocking and spring Najee Harris for, I think, a 20-yard run in against the Raiders. So, like, we've seen that already. And so that's what I want. That's what I want from him. I'm not expecting him to become the wide receiver 2 or the star of the team. But if you have that niche and he can show you that he can be a viable option there in the slot as an explosive horizontal field stretcher that can move the chains from time to time, I think that's realistic for him.
If people remember last year's draft, I liked Ruben Wilson. I thought that he could be an interesting fit for the Steelers if they got him in the later rounds. They did get him in the third, and that to me, I was like, okay, now if he can be that guy that gets you some speed, stretches the field a little bit, like you said, horizontally, that's the stuff that can help you add some chess pieces to your offense. Where he might not be the primary, he might not be a primary threat, but if he could develop over a few years, become a wide receiver 2 for you, that could be a nice option to have for you long term, because he tested well at the combine. He's shown that toughness to be that guy that's going to do the dirty work. And with the guy that's his size and his skill set, you need to be able to do the dirty work. That's a big part of what makes you valuable. And I think all that adds up. We got a chance to talk to Ruben Wilson when he appeared at OTAs. Here was some of our chance to chat with him after the Steelers' first practice on Tuesday.
This is the second year in a row where there's been an opening for at least one of the top 2 starter spots. Is that a carrot for you guys to chase everybody else?
What's the question?
As far as the openings in the depth chart, what with George being moved and all? Last year was Deontay.
Yeah, what's the question?
Do you feel like there's a carrot to chase there for you guys, for you and Calvin and everybody else in the depth chart to become a starter?
Yeah, I mean, of course, everyone wants to compete, but the only thing I'm really focused on is getting better every single day and just being ready when my name's called. So that's all I can worry about.
What did Zach Frazier try to charge you with, or like to talk to you about, like, hey, work on this in the offseason so that we can hit the ground running when we get to this part of the year?
Yeah, definitely just route indicators, my body level, my hip level, burst in and out the breaks, and working on my blocking technique.
Did you go to a private gym, or like how'd you work on that?
I can get in wherever. I can be at home, local park, wherever I work out at.
So Ruben Wilson talking about the route indicators there. I think that's the biggest thing about him, is that he has the raw, like you said, explosiveness to be a dangerous receiver threat. He has the hands. He has to work on his craft to be able to win more naturally when he's in the slot, when he's against guys. Because you know what? Here's the thing. At college, that explosiveness will win you a lot just off the bat, because cornerbacks in college can be NFL guys, can be anybody. But in the NFL, a lot of guys are going to be explosive. A lot of guys are going to be fast. They're also going to be smart enough to counter the ways that you want to use your explosiveness. So they'll find ways to cut you off. And that's where route running comes into play, is that you find the things you do early coming out of the snap, going in and out of your breaks, to set them up, to kind of put them in a status where I can't tell what he's trying to do. Like, for example, that was something that I thought Antonio Brown did so well. So many of his routes, regardless if it went left, right, deep, or short, you couldn't tell where he was going because of his center of gravity, because of how consistently he did his footwork. That's what made it so tough to predict where he was going, and that's what made him an elite route runner. Ruben Wilson doesn't need to be elite. He just needs to show proficiency. And if he's able to do that in his first real year in the NFL and take steps forward with that, and it sounds like that's what Zach Frazier, Steelers wide receiver coach, has been working with him, that could go a long way to letting that explosiveness actually show up on the field for the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, route tempo, I think, is a big thing for him, because Ruben Wilson's a very one-speed guy, I think.
Yeah.
Winning at the line of scrimmage, can we have a little bit of a release bag to maybe play you outside a little bit? You don't have to play outside a ton, but, can you play in the slot 70% of the time and still go out there 30% of the time? And can you trust him to win a little bit? I think that's going to be a big question. The route running part was the biggest thing for me, kind of coming out of Michigan. He was a slot-only player because he didn't really have a deep bag of releases, and his route running was really raw. Now he has, I think, kind of really solid athletic traits that project that he could become a really solid route runner, right? I mean, he's quick in and out of his breaks. He's got incredible burst. He's not stiff laterally, so it's not like there's athletic limitations holding him back from becoming a route runner. So I think that's going to be the big thing. It's going to be how much of a step did he take there? And so we'll see. I think, he is going to be tasked, obviously, with no answer right now across from DK Metcalf as a sure thing. He's going to be tasked with playing inside and outside during the spring and the summer. So I think they're going to figure out what they have here in him. And so, as you mentioned, that route indicators, I think the tempo, I think using his eyes is going to be big. He's sometimes, what I noticed on Michigan tape is sometimes where his route was going to go, he would just stare a black hole through, like it with laser eyes. I'd like to see him sell the route a little more as well. So there's a few things that he can work on, but he's got the raw tools to become a route runner. It's just working on it. So I think that's the good thing, is I don't think there's an athletic limitation holding him back from being a good route runner.
It's going to be about can he take on what Zach Azzanni is teaching. And listen, as a person who studies different guys, that's what Zach Azzanni tries to preach a lot. He's a big route runner guy. He's a big try to do the little things to set up the big plays type of guy. That's what he works on. And if Roman Wilson takes well to coaching in the NFL, that should be something that could really help him out moving forward, and we could set him up to be one of those guys that could contribute sooner rather than later at the wide receiver position. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Steelers secondary. We got a chance to talk to DeShon Elliott, including his thoughts on Juan Thornhill and what it might mean for the secondary to be flexible this season with a new DBs coach on the team. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh, stick with us. We'll be right back. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh. I want to throw to DeShon Elliott because we had a chance to talk with him. Of course, the Steelers have let go of DeMonte KZ. They've brought in Juan Thornhill. Juan Thornhill offering a different package of a skill set as far as as that third safety that can be on the field with Elliott and Minkah Fitzpatrick, and the flexibility of what that group might be able to do could really impact the Steelers secondary plans with however they plan to use the slot cornerback position, where they want to line up their safeties. And I want y'all to take a listen to how DeShon Elliott addressed that when he was asked about Juan Thornhill roles and what's specifically going to be asked of him and what's going to be expected of the safety group. Here was DeShon Elliott on Tuesday at Steelers OTAs.
You can have one practice maybe, but Thornhill, you play with him or know him? Or
Nah, I mean, I think he might be a year younger than me, but good dude. He was here for a little bit during OTAs. Really smart dude, energetic. I know he's been around the league. I think he played for the Chiefs. I played against him a couple times there, and then he played last year in Cleveland. But we're just happy to have somebody who can play safety, the depth, we need it, especially a guy who has experience to make plays. So we're just happy to have somebody.
Has his ability been talked? Have you guys talked about his ability to maybe add flexibility to what you guys can do with his ability to cover deep and rotate you guys more around to disguise what you're doing more?
I think we all have the ability to play wherever it's needed. Mm-hmm. Still early in OTAs. We're still just trying to get the simple things in, but for the most part, I'm sure we'll talk about certain things down the lines, what they want to actually practice. So we'll be all right.
You said it's a new season and stuff, and not to worry about last year, but did that piss you off? That motivate you guys the way it ended that year defensively, or since you really move on?
I'm a pissed off individual, so I mean, I don't know. It's all the same to me. Definitely new season. We know what our goals are as a defense and as a team. We just try to take it one day at a time and accomplish those goals with the leadership of our coaches and the captains that we have on defense. So we'll be all right.
He said, I'm a ticked off individual, and didn't use the word ticked. But basically, DeShon Elliott diving into things there. That I do think that flexibility is going to be interesting, Nick, because Minkah Fitzpatrick, I thought, was often having to be the free safety because that DeMonte KZ was more of that Mike Mitchell role of a free safety where he hit first and ask questions later. And DeShon Elliott is a strong safety, and they did try to move Minkah Fitzpatrick into some box play to help out at times. But I think with Thornhill, you might legitimately have three guys that you can rotate to be deep, to be short, to be intermediate, and that could be the guessing games as long as the cornerback plays on the outside and teams don't feel comfortable just picking at the sidelines every single play. That could be a ticket to getting more mistakes over the middle with what the Steelers want to do with their secondary.
Yeah, they had a super vanilla coverage scheme last year. Just a lot of spot drop cover 3, a lot of cover 1, not a lot of mixing and matching. Obviously, when they did some mixing and matching, things didn't go well, Chris, with communication. And then they didn't have the corners, I think, to run a lot of different things. Not a lot of trust in Dante Jackson. Certainly didn't have a lot of trust in Cam Sutton down the stretch. You should have more trust in Slay, obviously, and hopefully Beanie Bishop in year 2. But really, when you talk about Thornhill, that guy's a deep safety. Like, he is going to play free safety single high. He can play ball hawk. He can play a little overhang. But what it allows them to do, and I think what they want to do, is get Minkah in that robber role. Get Minkah in the slot every now and then when he has to kind of match those tight ends coming down, right? It allows him to do a lot more. So that 3 safety nickel package becomes a lot more usable when you have that guy up top. Now, they put KZ up top, but when they did that, we saw a lot of teams kind of hurt them down the field, hurt them up the seams. And KZ, as you mentioned, was a hard hitter that kind of kind of was more of a box guy, even though he played
Yeah.
deep a decent amount. I'm not sure, at this stage in his career, that's really where KZ shines. Thornhill, I think, when you look back at his days in Kansas City, that's where he was the guy. And so that's where they're going to put him. We'll see if they can get Minkah back to being Minkah. I think that's going to be the big thing. Can Minkah make the splash plays as a result of that? But I think this 3-safety nickel is going to be a huge part of it. And if they want to have those rotations and confuse quarterbacks like I think they want to, because they were so vanilla last year, that'll be a huge part of it.
I do think it's going to be part of it. They need to not be vanilla. And listen, Gerald Alexander, the new DBs coach, who's really not new. He was the assistant DBs coach a couple of years back, went to the Raiders to be their safeties coach, comes back, and now he's the DBs coach for the Steelers and plays with Grady Brown. I look at what he's going to be able to do with this Steelers secondary, and if he can get them back to being later in that same interview, DeShon Elliott when asked like what is being taught, and he's like, "Hey, we are here to be playmakers. We're they want to get back to being not just the guys that keep the lid on the plays, but the guys that make the difference in the plays, and that's something that does need to happen." Minkah Fitzpatrick has had 1 interceptions in the last 2 seasons. Granted, 2 seasons ago he spent half of it being injured, and that really impacted things. But last season, teams were able to avoid him a lot because they were able to pick at different parts of the secondary. They were able to scheme things up to kind of keep Minkah Fitzpatrick not there. And there were also secondary communication breakdowns that the Steelers talked about. In fact, we had a very viral clip on this very show from DeShon Elliott talking about how he was just sick and tired of people not doing their jobs and not doing the things that they've worked on in practice. And so I really do think that a big part of what the Steelers have to accomplish on defense this season is getting that down pat. And, Gerald Alexander, one thing that DeShon Elliott also said later in that interview was like, that guy doesn't play around. Like he's demanding, he wants the details. He's pushing for that. And that voice is going to be a big thing there. So I think this is going to be a year to test like, hey, we're going to put everyone to the test. We're not going to be sugarcoating anything. We're not going to be, this isn't rookie year Joey Porter Jr. anymore. And I know this segment's been more about the safeties, but this is not going to be a year where they're going to put kid gloves on Joey Porter Jr. They're going to be expecting him to take a serious step up, much like they're going to do for Broderick Jones and people of the 2023 draft class. But I think that if they're able to do that, that puts another we're checking off boxes that the Steelers need to check off themselves as far as to be a good team this year. The O-line's one, the secondary is another big part of what they need to get back to being a good unit, because when they communicate, they're tough. They're tough. They're tough to beat because they're in the right spots and they do have smart schemes that can counter what teams try to do. But when those communication breakdowns happen, that's when everything falls apart. It kind of takes away the whole point of making Terrell Austin your defensive coordinator, because that's exactly what he was assigned to do, was to, hey, let's create some more complex coverage schemes so that teams get tripped up by more traps that we set on our X's and O's.
100%. I mean, I think of the Steelers, when they were really, really good in 2019 and 2020, they were all about disguises, right? They'd run all that cover 2 trap stuff to the side. They'd run all these different kind of variations of their coverages. And it really fooled with quarterbacks. I remember in 2019 when the Rams came to town and Cooper Kupp was having a great season, and they just made Jared Goff completely lose his marbles because they were moving all around. Minkah was everywhere.
Yep.
And that's where I think they need to get back to. There needs to be trust here. And there's probably going to be some split field coverages this year. I mean, Porter and Slay are very different corners. Like, Porter's a press man guy at this stage in his career. Slay's probably more of an off man corner. So you might see a quarter half type of defense every now and then. You might see more techniques being used on one side, not being used on the other. It's just going to be different. And Joey showed steps last year in terms of his zone instincts and zone coverage kind of overall feel. I think that was the big thing. Route combinations. Like, there was positive things. Lost in all the penalties and everything. I thought that was really something that went under the radar with Porter, was his zone coverage instincts got better last year. And so it's going to be a big boy time for him. And for Beanie Bishop too, right? Or whoever is starting in the slot, whether it's him, Dante Kent, Sebastian Castro, or someone else. The slot's going to be a big part of this too, because when they go to nickel, they better be able to trust that slot corner to be able to do whatever they could. They could not trust Cam Sutton at all last year.
Right.
And that hurt them. And that was a big part of why they got so vanilla down the stretch, because every single time they tried something of a wrinkle, something went haywire. And so that's really what you got to look at, is let's have communication up to snuff and make ball plays, because that's how Minkah Fitzpatrick is allowed to be Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's how Darius Slay can become the ball hawk he can. And that's how everyone's more comfortable in that secondary. If you're blowing coverages, it doesn't really matter how good your front four is. And the Steelers' front four is going to be quite good again. But it doesn't matter how good their pressure is if the slant's wide open 5 yards away and the quarterback gets it out in 2.1 seconds. How many times did we talk about that last year? The pass rush was neutralized just because the secondary breakdowns allowed them to beat you with quick. It was death by 1,000 cuts all year. Like, that was the big thing last year. And so you can't let that happen again.
How many times how often do you think that a 3 safety set takes away the need for a slot cornerback this season where they try to flex one of those safeties into the slot? Or is that going to be a rare occurrence, do you think?
I mean, I don't think it's rare. I think what they ran at like 35, 40% of the time, probably last year with KZ. I mean, probably maybe a little bit of an uptick. They're still going to play a lot of just traditional nickel, though, I think. We'll see that a lot. And so that's going to be something we look at. And maybe the 3 safety nickel, I'm leaning more and more towards Minkah kind of roaming down into that slot role every now and then, just because he was so good there when he has played over those tight ends. But listen, their ability to have that in their back pocket along with their traditional nickel is important because that is exactly the type of personnel mixing and matching that can work, right? So if you have Beanie Bishop and you can trust Beanie Bishop more on passing downs, then cool. Go gung-ho with the 3 safety nickel on early downs because you can throw a DeShon Elliott in there as basically another linebacker for your run defense. You can throw a Minkah down there. He's really good in the box whenever they allow him to. So all of this is mixing match. It allows them to be more matchup diverse. I thought that was something last year this defense ran into issues with was just in certain matchups, they were kind of doomed just by what they kind of didn't have and what they couldn't trust. This year, that's going to be a big part of that. So having that 3 safety nickel and your traditional nickel, your dime, et cetera, all in the bag is going to be very important.
Absolutely. We'll continue to monitor how the Steelers handle that moving forward. It's just one day of OTAs. We got 5 more before we get to mandatory minicamp. Still no word on Aaron Rodgers. Also, real quick, Nick, is it a big deal that TJ Watt didn't show up for the first day of OTAs?
No, I don't think it is.
Okay, we're
just getting it is.
It's just getting that out of the way because I know there's a lot of people like, oh, he didn't show up. He's really mad. No, like TJ Watt wasn't there, DK Metcalf wasn't there. It's gonna be fine. Like
Patterson wasn't there.
There you go. So
no, it doesn't matter. And TJ did this last year, where I think he showed up like the first 2 days and then missed like the next 4 or 5. So it's nothing crazy.
It's nothing crazy. Yes, the contract negotiations are still going on. I think both of us are on the side of this is going to get done. You know, there's going to be some posturing, but eventually it's going to be signed. Everyone's going to be happy and family, and then TJ Watt's going to come into the year and be receiving AP votes again by the end of the season because he's still going to be that kind of a player. So that being said, we're gonna end this show. We're gonna come back tomorrow, but hey, more OTAs. What do you think about what we talked about here? Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu. Are you excited to see the Steelers OT future finally being set in place? Let us know in the comment section. Also, as always, call in with your questions to our Locked On Steelers call-in line at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. We'll try to get your questions on the show. Nick, let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
You can follow me on Twitter at Farabaugh.FB. Follow me on Blue Sky at Nick Farabaugh. Make sure to read the stuff, PennLive.com/Steelers. All the stuff is there, including my Steelers takeaways from today. A lot of good info in there. And make sure to check out the YouTube channel as well, the Steelers Blitz on Penn Live.
Absolutely. He's Nick Farabaugh. I'm Chris Carter. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all social media is all the same handle everywhere at Carter Critiques. You can read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. You can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of those daily Monday through Friday episodes. Back here tomorrow with another episode of Locked On Steelers after another day of OTAs right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.